All right, okay, and welcome everybody to today's Discover AuraDB session. We are in season 2, episode 9. So, in this episode, or in this season rather, we look at new features, new capabilities, things you might have missed since Aura regularly adds new features, new capabilities all the time. Things get added, things are improved, and we want you to let you know when these things are happening. And some of these things are kind of like sneaking in quietly, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Wow, this is cool! Why don't I know about this?" And it's like, this is the place for you to get to know about what's recently been added and what's hot and new in Aura. So if you're building with Aura, I think this should be an interesting session. If you're new to Aura, this is also interesting, so you get a bit of an overview of all the features. You could obviously always look back to previous episode and check out what's been covered before. So just as a little teaser for what we did last time. We had covered Aura agents, which have been added just recently to the product. So if you want to build something with agentic AI, check this episode out. But today we do something different. So I'm very happy to have Greg King join me today. Greg is one of the product managers at Neo4j. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Alex. Great to be here.
Cool. And you're looking for a couple of different parts of the product, and this is basically your business to make these more as interesting and as powerful and as easy to use for the users of Aura.
Indeed, yeah. So I'm product manager for a couple of key areas of the product that you see in console. So the things I plan to talk you through today are the import capability that's been there for a little while now that allows you to get data in from kind of different data sources. And then I also am responsible for developer tooling, the query, or also available as standalone browser in the self-managed version of Neo4j, and some of the extensions like the VS Code extension. So yeah, I'm hoping to show you some of the latest stuff there and some stuff that's been coming.
Cool, super. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll hand it over to you shortly, but as always, this is live. As you watch this live, so you can ask questions. You can let us know if you have a feature request for anything. If you have a great way of data importing and you want Greg to know, then this is your chance. Let us know in the chat. Also, if you watch this afterwards, you can also let us know in the comments on YouTube if you have any other features, anything you like or you don't like, or anything you like to see improved. This is a nice way to get a feedback, I think, from this point of view. So but now without further ado, I guess we can jump in.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. And if there are any questions coming in as they come, I'm currently on a single screen, so just interrupt me and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'll shout. Yeah.
Cool. So let's start with import. So just to give some background for people who may not be familiar with the history of some of these parts of the application. So a few years back now, we added to the old version of Aura Console, we added a file-based import for that application, which allowed you to import locally from CSV files, TSV files, that those files were kind of streamed through your browser. But since then, and as we've built the new console, we've added many more data sources and matured that capability. So I wanted to show you some of the latest things that have been added. Actually, some of them only in the last couple of weeks, and some of the things that are they're either due out today or they're due out imminently. Around things like composite keys, where we've got additional support for mapping data in different ways. So the first thing I wanted to show you is, well, we've got these different sources available now. So you've got relational databases, cloud data warehouses, and some of the cloud buckets from the major cloud providers. And these can all be set up, as you imagine here. You kind of connect with data sources to your database, providing host names, credentials, or for example with Google Cloud Storage, providing your bucket paths and mapping those to kind of virtual tables and providing some access credentials. And all of these data sources can be used in the same way. So you configure data sources and then you use them, you map them to a graph data model, And I've got many different graph data models configured here in my role as a product manager, testing things out and how we build our capability. And then those can be used to run import jobs. So there's the same model here that you can see. I've actually been running this one via API. And it just runs every day into a couple of different instances, giving me some reporting on some, in fact, how the import application is being used by people. So that's pretty cool. But I thought I'd just give you a run through of how that works and the capability we launched a couple of weeks ago now. So up until this point, everything that we've done from an import perspective has been online import jobs into the Neo4j databases. So that means the loads that we do are transactional. So the database is online and we load the data in, and all our load operations are idempotent. It won't, if you run the same source, it won't change things, but if you add incremental data, you'll get updates to your graph. And that's all well and good, but if you want to get really large amounts of data into the database, for anybody who's familiar with especially self-managed Neo4j, and they might have created dump files in this way, you can use a tool called Neo4j admin import, or Neo4j admin database import, I think it's called now, to create the store files for the database. And it's kind of typically orders of magnitude quicker to create the database when you've got those volumes, larger volumes of data. So what we have now specifically for these, it's available initially for these three cloud buckets here. So if you've got anything in S3, Azure Blob and Data Lake Storage, or Google Cloud Storage, if you've got Parquet files or CSV files, you will see a new option when you come to running your import job. So let me just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to save you going through the whole flow of setting up a data source, because it takes just a little while. And I'm going to bring up a previous configuration that I've created with the LDBC scale factor 1 dataset. So it's a while since I created this one. Hopefully it's all still good for the live demo. So what I've done is, this is a Google Cloud Storage bucket with these. I can't remember off the top of my head, actually. These are either, if I went to look at the source, these are either CSV files or Parquet files behind the scenes. And these have been created, these have been mapped to this data model. So this is a social media kind of mock benchmark data set. And this one's actually on the relatively small end of the scale. So this is the, this is SF10, I think. So this is, it's not tiny. It's a reasonable amount of data here, something that makes it worthwhile using the bulk import capability. And you can see things here, they're mapped. We're correlating people and comments with the IDs and the creator person IDs, and this gives us our graph. But now what we have, so when we run the import job and we select a target instance, so let's put this 16 gig pro instance that I've created, we have the existing capabilities that we had before to create an online import, and there's some kind of rough guidance given there, but we have a new capability that's in preview to run bulk import jobs. So if I select that now, this is going to then take me through, this is going to submit the job, and it's going to take me to the import jobs page. And we're going to come back to this later, because I don't want to kind of sit here and watch this on the demo, but we'll come back to this later and see what kind of progress it's making. And Alex, maybe if you can remind me if I forget to go back to it, and we'll just see the kind of progress we've got reported here and how that's loaded into that.
No, let's look at that later. Yeah, cool. And just for people's understanding, SF10, what does that mean?
So that's scale factor. That's scale factor 10.
Okay.
And we'll maybe have a look at the end how much data that's loaded in. But for example, we've been loading in scale factor 1000, which is in the I think it goes into the low trillions of elements into your graph.
Okay.
And scale factor 1, I think, is in the kind of tens, hundreds of thousands, and that's, I think, scale factor 1, and scale factor 10 is a bit bigger than that. So yeah, it's the different sizes of the benchmarking data sets. So while that's kind of queued and running, I'll just show you some other things that have been introduced recently, and I can probably just create a new graph model to show this. So let's look at this one. So this is I think some recently released US data set around Medicaid provider spending, and this is a data set that I'm not super familiar with, but it's a good example of how we have actually, this is not released, but it's due out, I think, in the next couple of days. I've got kind of a preview flag turned on here that I can see as a product manager to see the stuff that's going to go out to you guys very shortly. we now support the multiple IDs, multiple columns being specified in ID. So here, for example, in this procedure node, that I think this dataset references a medical procedure. Previously, we could only specify kind of a unique procedure ID, and you'd have to have that one ID mapped in here. But now what we have is we have the ability to provide multiple columns. So here I've selected, for example, a reference number for this provider, but also the month in which they created that procedure. So rather than creating one node that then gets overwritten for each month and you lose data, if I put the month now in the ID, that will create a unique node for each provider for each month, and then give me my model that way. And then this carries through to kind of the mapping. So we have to kind of help the modeling tool understand how to kind of map from the multiple columns in the sources. So this has been a long requested feature, and it's finally coming out, and it's going to be available across all the different data sources. So regardless of whether you're going from one of your SQL databases, a cloud data warehouse, cloud buckets, or even your local CSV flow, there's now the ability to do that across all those sources. So that's really cool. There are some limitations when you're using bulk import, but the UI will kind of flag you and let you know if there are some things you do there that are unsupported from that perspective. So yeah, that's the main things I wanted to cover from the recent things delivered from the import perspective. Let's have a check-in on this import job, see what's going on. Okay, cool. So we can see that progressing here, and we'll come back to this at the end as well and just see how it's completed. So you can see already there are kind of, I think, 7 million comments loaded into this graph, and we get slightly different progress reporting here versus the online import job. The online import one, it's just a kind of, it loads the data and you see it happening live, and if you go to the database, you'd be able to query it as it's being loaded. Here it's preparing the database. We'll see when we come back to it. Once it's prepared the database, it will go through the process of uploading it and then bringing the database online such that we can query it. And you can see the nodes, being inserted there. So that's all that. So let's switch across now to the query application, because there are a few things here that have been delivered recently that are really cool and allow you to understand the graph much better. I'm going to show you some of these query type capabilities in the VS Code extension as well. So you see how you can do those things. If you're using VS Code, how you can avoid even needing to come to the query application. If you've got some simpler things you need to do, that extension has got a lot more capable in the last few months. So we have saved Cypher here for a little while now. When you're using Aura Console, all this stuff is saved to cloud storage. So if you use the standalone browser, that continues to be just stored within your web browser storage. I think you might have some affordance down here that will tell you that that's happening. But when you use Aura, all this saved Cypher will be saved to the Aura Console storage. So wherever you log in from, whichever browser, whichever machine, you'll always have your saved Cypher available to you. So let's take a look. So I've loaded a sample data set in here that is, you can probably see here, it's a relatively simple data set, and it just represents transactions and accounts. It's a mock financial data set that's got transactions going from and to different accounts. And I've got a little query here that I think is quite nice. Now this is running, I think, against a free instance. So it does quite well considering the complexity of the query. So let's just run this. It might just take a few seconds to run. I've got this quantified path. I think this is a quantified path pattern query that's looking for repeating relationships of cache citing. The query itself is not too important, so don't worry if you don't understand it. But it's quite a neat query that looks for kind of fraud rings and movement of funds between accounts that then start from one account, go through many accounts, and then go back to another. So if I run this query, it's going to find all occurrences of that. And I think some of these rings that it finds are quite complex, but I thought it'd be useful to show you. There we go. Used to show you how some of the new features we've developed in query can help you better understand how elements in the graph presented in the table view link to elements in the graph that are rendered in this graph visualization here. So what we have as of, I think it's been out for 2 or 3 months now, we've revamped the full screen, the expanded frame visualization. So if you come here and you expand, you now have the ability, you have the original mode in which the visualization would work. So, you've got your query at the top, your query at the bottom. I don't think you could do this manually before, but we now have that capability to kind of grow and shrink how we use the space.
That's
We've
cool.
also, and we've also introduced like a left to right mode as well. So you can kind of, if you want, if your query needs a bit more space, in a certain direction, you can choose to put that there. But the real big new thing that we've put in is we've given you the ability to have both in place at the same time. And actually, let me show you a slightly simple query to start with. I'll just return, let's say, all these different paths, and then let me maybe just say, if I remember my syntax, we can make these paths between 3 and 5 long. Just bring back 25 of them. What have I done? Oh, I think it's this direction here. Let's try that. Okay, cool. And let's actually make it a bit longer, between 6 and 8. Cool. So this is a really good example of a query here. So you can see here I'm returning 25 rows of paths. So each of these paths is between 6 and 8 long. And when you understand how Neo4j works, you can kind of understand that there are actually 25 rows being returned here in this graph. But for somebody who's new to Neo4j, you're like, well, you wonder, how on earth do these 25 rows I'm returning here? Well, I'm kind of skipping to think, how on earth do these rows I'm returning here, relate to this graph I'm seeing here? Because there's a lot of deduplication that goes on when rendering that graph visualization. So we've done two things to kind of help you guys understand that. So we've had for a while this kind of simple text view and this formatted text view that shows you clearly like the accounts and the relationships and transactions, for example, which is quite easy to read, but it's not quite as easy to read as this new view that we've introduced, which is this graph. We call it the graph chip view. So it shows in a very familiar format all the elements that you have in the graph. In this example, I think this was the accounts, and these were the transactions and the relationships between them. So you can much more clearly see that structure than you could in this view here. This view still, of course, has
better.
You want to see all the properties in the visualization at the same time, but for this one, you can see that view. And what we've also done is we've brought the familiar property inspector as well to this view as well. So you can see if I click these things here, you can also inspect the properties in here too. And you can even see how it kind of shows you when you're viewing the same thing across different rows. So we've got Ange Malcolmson appearing in all of these rows. So that's pretty powerful. And it's all driven from the same visualization configuration as the main thing. So, if we want to make the transactions beige color and the people this, the accounts this orange color, then we can do that. And that's all carried through to the it should at least be carried through to the visualization here. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Slight lag in that appearing. So all these paths give you a much easier view of understanding things. But what's really cool now is when we go to this visualization here, and let me change the colors because I'm not super happy with those. So let me just bring the property inspector up. Let's maybe make those blue so it's a bit clearer what's going on, and let's make these orange. Cool. That's a bit better, I think. So what's really cool now about this interactive visualization is you can go through and you can start to understand, okay, these 25 rows, how do they relate to what's shown in the graph? So if I click on these rows here, you can say row 1 is this path.
Yeah, that's cool.
6 to 8 long here. This one is another path. This one's, probably the 7 in length. And this one is the 8 in length. And they're 3 different results. And they all have, I can select them at the same time. This one, these 3 together are the same as this one. They're just like subsets of this path. Okay. So this is super useful for understanding actually how does my graph query translate to the kind of tabular path results and things like that in your graph.
Yeah.
And then maybe let me just show you one more example. So I'll go back to the less trivial example that I had. So we go back to this cipher here. We can run this query. Now this is quite a complex one, but we can see, hopefully when this runs, let's make it full screen while we're waiting. We can look at, okay, so here there's obviously a very long path. That's this long path here that it's finding. So we can go down to the bottom and we can see some of the, I think it's very much, it's probably, there we go. We can see all the shorter paths down here. And how they relate. We can do, I think we can also see things like, so you can select in here and then you can kind of zoom to fit. Maybe if we wanted to
cool.
this one and this one, We can kind of zoom to fit both, so you can start interacting with both parts of the visualization. And let me show you a couple more things you can do in here. So now if we wanted to find, I don't know, let's just zoom back out. Let's just get back to full selection. Go to everyone in here. We can look at, let's just choose one of these names, Welsh, for example. So let's find the paths that include Welsh. So it's only this first path here that's been highlighted. So that's actually highlighting that row. If we go to the bottom, this might more clearly show. If we look for Diana, for example, if we search Diana, it's going to just show you it's just in that path there, and you can see matches in that path and how they correspond to it. Filters the visualization at the same time above, and at the same time there's quite a bit of flexibility, so you can also just search directly in the graph as well. So if I want to find nodes called Diana, you can search for those, specifically those nodes, rather than the paths on the row here.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. And then you obviously only get the individual nodes, right?
Exactly, because the table is like searching the whole rows, whereas the visualization is searching for specific parts. And you can see, that functionality is available just in the graph as well if you want to use it, and not in that visualization. And we can go back and find parts. Yeah. This is searching, I think, like all the strings. So DI is matching for Studio Press. If you put Studio in here, that will match this guy, but it won't match anything else in the graph. So that's pretty cool for getting through things. So that I think covers that covers most of the stuff to do with these new views in here. I'm not covering, probably I haven't got enough time to show everything that's been introduced recently, but we've got some we've got some pretty cool, nice things that people have wanted for a while. So we got some new access modes for query. So if you're worried about, if you want to stop yourself doing something stupid, you can go and put your driver connection into a read mode. It's not 100% guaranteed. There's some real edge cases where read mode could do something that writes, but they're very unlikely. There's more that can be read about in the kind of settings here in the documentation. But you can then avoid yourself, creating rubbish in your database, because you'll then be in this kind of read mode or manipulating stuff. Okay. So you can kind of change that here, or you've got commands for doing that as well, which is pretty nice. And then this has been I think this has been in for quite a while now, but I've talked with a few users recently, and they hadn't, and I think it's understandable, they hadn't necessarily noticed some of these features appearing. So we've had for a long time in old browser, we'd had the ability to set parameters. So you could do things like, if we bring up help here, you could set these parameters here using this command syntax. But there is also now a way of doing it a bit more visually as well. So you can type this command structure in here as well, but you can also set them in this side panel here. So I could put, I can select a date here, and then when I do that, and I'll rerun actually if I can just rerun the param thing here, oops, it will show, my date has been updated to reference what's been done in here. So you can do things in both places. You can, I don't know, I'll put my name, oops, if I can type, name Greg. I can also do more complex parameters as well. So we have support for a lot of the Neo4j types here, things like
I see, cool,
that date times, and you've got all the pickers. You can select all the times if that's a more convenient way. Kind of saves you needing to understand. It's probably quite a good way for learning as well. So if I've got that here, we can then rerun that, and we can see actually, let me just rerun this one. We can see kind of the local date time here being set. Learning some of that syntax. This is a bit of a hidden feature. Well, maybe not hidden feature, but one you can discover. We can also articulate complex types here if you want. So if you want to do a list of strings, we've got this thing that we call the evaluated type. So if you want to say a list, you can enter the familiar list syntax. You could say, string A, followed by string B, followed by string C, and stick that into here, and it gets evaluated. And you can't then change that in here, but it allows you to set a list kind of via the UI as well, without us having to build,
I see.
You could have a list of mixed things. It could be a list of string and date and other things. So we've got
it changed the type to list automatically, even though
yeah, exactly. So that's pretty cool.
And these values, are they outside of query available to users, or are they confined to query?
Yes, so these are so there is one thing that we have changed recently, that's a really good question. So the purpose of parameters is they're there to help you kind of debug, so if you're writing some application code somewhere, say in VS Code or whatever thing you're using, and you know, the good practice is to parameterize your queries. So you wouldn't be doing a query like, I don't know, match, what is it we got in here, account, and then, I don't know, where, you put in here where the email on the account is greg@gmail.com, you'd be doing, obviously, you'd be doing something like $email to reference the parameter. So these things you would set up typically in here, and the queries you'd be pasting somewhere else would be parameterized. So these serve to kind of help you test them, and you might look to maintain a list of parameters here that help you with testing. Previously, I think these were lost in old versions of browser and query, like they were kept in I think like while your tab was live, and then when you reloaded they disappeared. And you might still want that to happen, because you might be putting sensitive things in your parameters. You might be putting PII stuff that you don't want hanging around. But we now give you the option to, if you want to, retain those in local storage. So we intentionally, unlike Save Cipher, we don't stick those in our cloud storage, because we're very aware, you might be putting sensitive things in your parameters that you don't want uploaded to the cloud. But we do allow you to kind of retain them locally for convenience, in case that's helpful. So they're there next time you visit the application. And
maybe an idea I just have is would be nice if you could mix it up, right? I mean, maybe you have a couple of params you want to keep, and couple where you say, okay, this is just for this session, and give them like a temporary flag or something. And when somebody reloads the browser, they go. Yeah, that's true. But the others stay. So now you don't have to choose between either or. You could kind of like define temporary ones.
Mix of types. Yeah, that's a neat suggestion. So then we've only got a few minutes left, I think. But the last thing I just wanted to show you was, because this has been around for at least 6 months, but the VS Code extension has been getting more capable. There's a bit of a sneak preview down here. Let me close it. So I am connected to where's the Neo4j logo here? So I'm connected to the same instance that I've got here in Aura's console, called my Scratch instance. So I've connected by this. You can bring up a connection form here and connect to it. I've connected to that and a particular database within it. So I'm connected currently to this ABDD, etc. database. And I can, for example, take this. Let's take one of the queries that I ran. I think I've cleared my history, but let's look at, actually we can look at the history tab to get some of these queries back as well. So let's look at one of the simpler queries that I was taking, like this one here. And let's just copy that out. We can run that if we want in VS Code as well. So did that run? Oh, okay. I think what I did is I collapsed this thing here. So if I change, there we go. So if I change, let me collapse this to the left. I could just bring back 5 rows here. I've got keyboard shortcuts for triggering it. You have, it's not quite as feature rich, but you have the core common visualization here that you have with browser application. Let's just run that in here. So obviously it doesn't share all the styling, because it's kind of, it's a simpler version of it. But you have kind of the full, I think previously you just had the table view, which is somewhat more basic. You now have the full power of the query visualization, and all the stuff that's been here for a while, all the language support that exists up here that does your auto completions is all shared with this application here. So you get the same nice editing experience for your Cipher. And we also have the ability to do things like set parameters. So there's the same kind of capability that you have. Slightly different experience, but you can set parameters. You can say, for example, I don't know, name, parameter name, and then let's just make that Greg. Okay, that's a string, so I need to make it Greg. And then we'll have that set as a parameter that I can use here in my queries.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And I think we're pretty much out of time, but like a sneak preview.
It's fine. Don't rush. I mean, we can finish it up.
Cool. Well, yeah. The last thing I'll give you is that this is not released right now, so this is my sort of preview build of this stuff. If I just, this is not the most interesting example because this schema is what's going on here? Call db dot I don't know why. Curse of the demos. Maybe this is because I got an early version of this. Why doesn't that work? Okay.
I think you missed them. No, you don't. No, sorry. It's too small.
Let me just. Oh, okay. Did I accidentally switch to the? I think I switched to the system database. Well, otherwise, there's some kind of bug in my development build. Let's see if I can. Okay, so that worked. So I've got a quite simple schema here. It's just as you saw before, transactions, links to accounts. But what we're going to have soon is the ability to not just complete labels here, like and relationship types, but when you start here and you have, okay, I'm going to have to describe to you what happens because I think I know what's happening. Let's try again. Account. Okay, yeah, so when you've got a valid query, so what happened there is I hadn't finished this part of the query, so it was kind of it was not valid. But here, if we're just in a query, we're going to start having completions that are valid for the path. So this is for people who use Bloom and the visual path.
Yeah.
We're going to start showing you things that are valid. So here, something that's valid is a from relationship from this transaction, and then I can kind of tab through. I can optionally name those if I want, and then I can have more completions, and I can go back out to another from or back to another to, and you can kind of keep building paths like this through here. So that's going to come to VS Code, and it's going to be available in query as well. That should be coming out in the next few days. Then maybe what I can just show for a wrap is let's see if this import job has completed and what's going on. Okay, so it's not quite completed, but we can see the latest state. So this has gone through. It's created all the store files. It's created all the relationships. You can see it's a non-trivial database. It's got if you add these all up, it's got the hundreds of millions of relationships. Yeah. 9 minutes to create the store file, uploading it, and now it's just bringing the database online. So when that stage completes, we'll probably see in here that this 16 gig Pro instance is currently in a restoring state. That will come online and have the scale factor 10 dataset loaded in. That's pretty much everything I had for you guys, Alex. Are there any questions or anything you want to dive deeper on?
Thank you very much, Greg. No, there was one question in chat from Eshwa. Eshwa asks, once the import is done with any type of data set, then you want to do some data validation and maybe even display it on screen. Is there a way of is that done automatically, or is there do you have any recommendations on that when you import data?
Oh, for like checking, see if I understand the question correctly. Yeah, like checking what has been imported. So there is this is a different way of solving the same thing, but it's only available for one of the features at the moment. So, or one of the data sources. There is a thing you can do when you're loading from just local CSV files, which is more for experimentation. So if I've got sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But I could drag a CSV file onto here. Let me just see if I can find a random CSV file here. So I really don't know what's in these CSV files, so I should be a bit careful, but let's see. There's some CSV files around. Let's just check. It's a fairly innocuous one. Let's see what that one is. Okay, so like some data models and things. There is for models you do like this, you can run a preview here for these sources before you even load the data to see actually, and then you'll get a visualization that shows. It won't be super exciting, but I could just map some data from here and show you. I'll just load in this element ID thing, so this will just show a load of nodes. And if I preview it against this Scratch instance, it will kind of churn through all the data and do a preview. So this will just end up with a load of nodes. So you could go in here and kind of look at what is loaded against this. But it's only available for that local flow. For the other flows, you do have to load the data. And then my go-to there would be just switching to your database, and you could use Explorer as well, but you can then click on the elements that have been loaded, see the shape of the graph, and then that might give you some insights for tweaking. We can just see, just in case it has come online. Let's see if the demo gods are being good to us. Okay, this one's still in the restoring state, but yeah, what I would do is then connect to that connect to that instance I've just loaded the data into when it becomes available, when it's restored, and you can start using the UI there for kind of inspecting the nodes that you've loaded, just like you can do in this one, to see how that looks and how the connections look.
Good, cool. And then one question that I had was when you showed this how do you call it, graph chip view? From the individual queries. Is there are you thinking about, if you click on one and then popping that over into visually into the Bloom basically section, so to say, hey, I now I realize this is a subpath maybe of my path of paths, so this is like one section I'm particularly interested in, and I want to then continue looking at it maybe a little bit more visually instead of in query.
Right. Yeah, got you. So kind of. So if we do, let me see, there are some features we introduced recently that might help with that. So you could let's do that here. I mean, this is a very trivial example because this graph is not super exciting, but let's try and demonstrate that here. This is a good demo test. So let's say if you're interested in this one here, you could, I think, let me just see. We do have some different selection modes now. So we can select these. I think what we're missing is I don't think we have an invert selection to then dismiss and stuff. But let's see what this explore graph does. I think so we can explore graph to kind of send this stuff to explore. Let me just see what it does here. I honestly don't know whether it does the selection or everything. Okay, so it does everything. But there is that flow you can have to send what you've got here into explore. But maybe there'd be some interesting stuff here. Like you could, for example, I mean, this is probably not the neatest way of doing it, but let's see if this works. You could draw a line around this stuff. We're interested in that stuff. You could dismiss it, and then let's see if it works. Kind of like, let's explore just that in here, and you get that stuff.
Okay.
So it's a bit of work. It's a good question.
Yeah, cool. But that's also a newer feature, I think, where you can basically just pop things over, and if you I think it's particularly helpful, right? If you are more on the query side and you write the Cypher queries, but you want to hand it over to somebody who is maybe working on the Explore path, you don't have to copy and paste everything left and right. You just click on and make it available through there.
Exactly, and there's some really cool things you could do, like that. That there's only so much space for working with things in the query interface. So, like, I think a really cool one that you could. I mean, I think this is one I tried the other day. For example, this stuff is this query, if you look at it, is very time focused. It's looking at progression of dates. I think everything in these chains has to have a later date. So if I go to explore graph here, I'm no Bloom expert, but I think I can bring up a filter. Oh no, sorry, not a filter. There is the
slicer. What's it called? Yeah,
exactly. So I could, for example, put the transaction date on this slicer.
Exactly.
I could rewind it here, and then I could play it through, and then you could see. Or in fact, I think you can do it in a different way. You can configure it so that it does something like that. So I think we can see. Let me go back to the beginning. We can see these whole paths kind of going along as time progresses. So you can see, this date progression of things along the path, which is pretty another way of understanding how the data all links together.
Super. That was very interesting. Thank you very much, Greg, for this overview in data importing and the query improvements, plus a little extra on VS Code extension updates. So
cool.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Thanks, Alex.
Before I let you all go, I'd like to obviously mention a couple of things. We have our next stream taking place on the 12th of March with Neo4j The Definitive Guide, with Luan and Christoph joining, who've written the Neo4j The Definitive Guide book, published on O'Reilly. So if you have any questions on them, for them about the book, about how to start with Neo4j or how to improve Neo4j, querying or working with graph data modeling is also another question that often comes up. We have 2 experts joining us live on the 12th. So if that's available for you, join us then. Road to Nodes kicked off last week, and it's obviously continuing. And then I know this is a bit tiny, but maybe I switch over here to this one, the bigger one. But we do, these 2-hour workshops. We had one on the 5th, so last week, and on the 11th, so also Wednesday this week, we have the next one. This time, then we talk about agents with the Microsoft Agentic framework. So that should be interesting as well, and very, very insightful in how to work with Neo4j graphs and in agents. If you want to meet people on site, I'd like to invite you to the Graph Summits that are kicking off this week. So tomorrow in Copenhagen. So if you're around, come by. Munich next week, Paris later in April, San Francisco, New York, and London later as well in the year. So join us then. And if you want to start building, start working with Neo4j now, check out Graph Academy courses. There are specifically on Aura, new courses have been added by the team on Aura fundamentals, on Aura capabilities, and how to get started with Aura. So I think that's a great place to start. And obviously, as Greg showed, get an Aura free instance, spin it up, and you're ready to go with all the features we showed today. You can play around and you can build your with these. And yeah, I think that's what we had for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. As I said beginning, if you have any questions, Neo4j community page or the comments in the YouTube video description, that should be a place to interact. And otherwise, I hope to see you next time. And thank you very much, Greg, again for giving us this little whirlwind tour of the new capabilities.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.